Our first two speakers come from the world's second largest Fortune 500 company, which posted revenues in 2022 of $514 billion and is a global powerhouse in the world of e-commerce logistics. They ship over 1.6 million packages a day, or if you prefer, more than 66,000 packages per hour. They are, of course, from Amazon. Today, they are joining us to talk about one of the growing threats to supply chain security from so-called chameleon carriers. And they'll be sharing their unique insights on the modus operandi of these operators, the regulatory challenges for businesses, and the response options for the business and law enforcement communities across the EU. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Amazon's Global Security and Loss Prevention Director, Gilad and Andreas Seidel, Director for Security and Loss Prevention, EMEA Field Operations, Amazon Global Security Operations. Gentlemen, over to you. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for allowing us to kick this off. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. I also wanted to say, before I start the presentation, I wanted to give a shout out to Ari, who is one of our previous members who helped us to understand a lot about what we are going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. So before I start, Gilad will kick in a little bit later, so we're doing this freestyle, so to say. Stagnant there. So where did we start and what did we see throughout the last couple of years? I think when COVID kicked in, no one really understood what is going to be the impact and how long will it take and what are we seeing this being the impact to the end in 2022. So we saw disruptive supply chains. We saw out of the blue drivers disappearing in our sector because we didn't have the volumes, everyone stayed at home to a certain degree, so we moved less goods unless you ordered with Amazon because obviously it seems that everyone tried to buy more from us, but also we faced all of the problems that drivers were not available, logistics space was not available. And then as soon as we thought that that's it, okay, we're out of COVID, back to normal, unfortunately, the events in the Ukraine actually changed everything again. So out of the blue, now we saw another country invading the Ukraine, something that we all thought would not happen in our neighborhood. But the war, with all of the implications and movement of drivers, movement of also a lot of individuals that are now displaced in the Ukraine coming to our markets and being allowed to work within the European Union. So we saw out of the blue Ukrainian drivers being able to drive in the European market and dealing with the programs. Now, this was all coming along with an increased inflation. And when I say it's about increased inflation, we found out that all of the companies are now more and more customer obsessed and customer focused. Because out of the blue, it's more about this. It's everything, and I'm sorry to talk about this as a 101, grow your business 101. Everyone is now focused on speed, cost, quality, safety, security, and on the people. With all of the implication that this has to us really dropping some of our security mindsets and compliance mindsets. When it's about speed and about cost, how much time and how much money do we invest in compliance programs? What does it mean when we think about the theft triangle, when we know that opportunities are created by lower effectiveness of existing controls? We all have seen this, and also all of our stakeholders out of the blue, so stakeholders calling them now the malicious actors, they're starting to have a different motivation. So we also saw a shift in this, and looking at the BSI Connect report, also from the TT Club, we also see that we now have lower value at some times of reported crimes because we have now more than 26% of insider involvement in cargo crime. So what did COVID basically do with all of us? And I think we all experienced this. We moved away from that personal contact. We moved to a more environment where everyone works from home, where everyone thought that working from home is the most secure thing that we can do because there can no one be around us. And I think we learned the lesson on this one. More threats, more cyber threats are existing in the private environment than we would actually have within our secure buildings. We see people losing the touch with others, so they're moving away from physical paperwork and everything is digitalized. A digitalized document is so easy to fake. It's so easy to fake now that you're a different company, because what out of the blue we don't have any longer are these personal relationships. Larger companies are moving into the direction of P2P networks, utilizing brokers, disconnecting themselves from the assets that they are moving. If I don't have any link between myself as the broker trying to get in the best price for my customer, because cost is a pressure, how much do I trust the partner that's actually going in? And we are going to touch this a little bit later, why this is important. And we see also an ever-increasing amount of cyber attacks. And it's not just about the big players, it's more about the small companies, logistic service providers, which are out there because they have the knowledge. It's about pricing structure, bidding structure, it's about shipment times, the routes, warehouses, stops, and even when we're talking about what are their preferred parking spots. So this had like an impact as we saw in the last year, right? Out of the blue, global trends did not change, right? So yes, we can argue we have less reported incidents, but some of them with a higher value, some of them with a showing where we have an insider involvement, showing us lower values, but it's all out there, it's coming, and you see large companies like Target being directly attacked by retail crime, and they reported just at the beginning of the year that they will see another impact of 500 million. But as we said, it's not only occurring from the outside, right? So it's mainly utilizing insider knowledge that's sometimes driving all of these risks and threats that we see. That's one of the reports, and I'm just going to quickly touch two of these incidents where we have seen, also shared by other industry partners, despite the fact that everyone applied seals, that everyone did the security checks, everyone acted as much as they thought that it's good, we saw diversion. We saw out of the blue the utilization of external warehouses close to other warehouses without anyone noticing this because GPS tracking signals were blocked, were removed. But at the same point in time, we also saw incidents where we identified 4 different vehicles, 4 different companies, all linked to the same owner, in one of the coming from Southeast Europe, that they were actually hitting quite hard and big. So, and you're seeing here, this case was about 1 million that was reported in Italy in the news. So what we know, and I think this is something that we are taking away from that safety concept, and many of you might have heard in the past about chameleon carriers as a safety problem. So carriers being off-boarded for safety violations, reoccurring and coming back. What if I tell you that they are doing exactly the same? I'm not telling you anything new, right? So criminal organizations are doing exactly the same, coming back and infiltrating our network as we see. And what they usually result in, so we have 2 things. Once it's pilferage, like everyone knows this, we're looking at it. It's difficult to identify. We have a trusted partner that's working with us for a long, long time, always losing below a certain threshold. And then we are covering this up by an understanding of the operational processes until they really snap and come back. Because the strategic theft, which for me is the more important thing and what we want to talk about today, it's when it's usually hitting you hard, quick. And most of the time, you don't know what happened before even the carrier disappeared again. Looking at this, and that's a slide that we reused because it's not changing. Fictitious pickups, internal threats, as well as freight exchange MOs, that's what we all know and what we all see. But I'm asking you, when we all know this, when we all see this, how many times do we allow this to reoccur? What did we do in order to strengthen our own mechanisms, our own processes, in order to harden all of our processes upstream? We might be good at knowing where this is happening, we might be good at catching them, but I think we are doing a better job as an industry, as well as a function, when we are helping the business that this is not occurring, that we don't see these events again. They're utilizing our non-compliance, our weakness. They utilize that we are actually complacent, that we are focusing on speed, that we are putting less focus on checking the standards of the trucks. And this is just focusing on a TIR code. And I think we all know way more examples of how trucks can be manipulated on the road and how little the cycle time actually is at a yard exit. When we are thinking about an amount of trucks, and now I'm referencing one of our sites where we have 700 trucks going in and out on the same day, we have a cycle time of 42 seconds in order to check the truck, get the truck booked out and off the yard in order to ensure that everyone meets the CPT, so the critical push time. Then the question is, how much can a guard at that position pay attention to all of this? What can we do to make it easier for them to identify all of these events? Now, as I said, the indicators that we know, we see the same equipment being used again and again and again. Basically, I can say, like, great. So it's so easy, right? So we just need to focus on the same driver names, the same truck IDs, register plates, in order for us to really remove them quickly. How many companies are doing this? How do we as an industry ensure that if they hit one of us and we remove them from our platform, what are we doing in order to prevent them from hitting another partner in the industry? One of the things that I said, like, usually when we're bidding all of these logics, we just need to follow the cash. Organized crime, and this is from 2018 and it didn't change. Organized crime is mainly focused at this moment in time, hitting our logistic field on cash intents. So looking at countries where we have a high cash ratio. So what do I mean with high cash ratio? I just tested myself. So in the past, I always had enough money in my pocket. Right now, I have a card. I have a mobile phone, I have a watch. Like, I don't pay cash. There are other countries, when I go on vacation, right, they all pay cash. They look at me like, well, what do you want with that card? You cannot accept a card. And the further we are going to countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, like the amount of cash in the utilization is higher. So what do I try to tell you with this? Whilst we see that a lot of the driver shortage that we are experiencing in Europe at the moment, and some of the figures speak about 380,000 drivers, yes, they are missing, but also on these markets, like in Romania and Bulgaria, we're also seeing a gap, like a lot of unfilled positions. However, we see a very strong growth of logistic companies in that area. So that's also what we know. So where the companies are funded and which legal framework they're operating is super different to where we see, like, where they're actually delivering, where they're hiring their associates, their drivers. So when we say they're playing two games, one is the long game, coming in, acting normal, winning the trust. Like, years, months, nothing is happening until they have that one opportunity. They found that golden arc which they need to attack again and again. Most of the time, this is conducted by carriers that we would trust, that we know for a longer time, but due to now also financial pressures that we're seeing on associates, truck drivers, they're coming in with lower salaries, they are more open to offers to actually support another operation. We know that they're utilizing truck stop laybys. Like, this is nothing new for us. And we see this. But now I'm going back to, like, hitting hard, hitting quick, and disappearing. Like, this is what I mean as a problem that we see where time is critical, knowledge is critical, and a full understanding of the whole structure and how we are onboarding our vendors. So everyone in the room, or who in the room is working with a broker for logistic movement? Anyone? Anyone utilizing a platform to book trucks, truckloads? I see one, thanks. Two? Oh yeah, great, amazing. So, right, so basically there's all about who's bidding lowest. Who's coming in at a price that's attractive enough in order for the company that's focused on cost to ship the goods. Whilst we do know that we have some of those that are going for an empty load and they just want to fill it up to make at least some earnings on the way back, some are continuously bidding low. And whilst some of the procurement departments might celebrate this as saying, like, hey, I just identified the next cheapest supplier for us, that's great, so we have a saving opportunity here. We need to understand it's not their business. The business is not to ship. The business is to steer. This is where they make money because they need to make an income. Obviously, they can't make it from that logistic process, So doing this, what are we seeing? Last minute low value bids coming in an hour before pickup. Subcontracting. Unknown drivers showing up. There is not the driver that I know, because also everyone is disconnecting the process. In the past, it might have been that it was easy to observe or to identify an imposter. Right now, it's difficult. So what is happening here, they're coming in low. They're getting a lot of loads. They know exactly, based on information that they gathered via their intelligence systems, when to hit, at which point in time. And before you know, 5, 6, 10 loads are targeted at the same time. Most of the time, when we then all do our investigation, and I think the security professionals in this room, we know how to investigate this, we know how to utilize GPS data, we know how to track this. We find out of the blue, and it's in the picture in the middle, like the white dots are not mushrooms. These are like GPS signals around a location. And that location has to do nothing with operations. The company that faced this had a warehouse 20 miles down the road. But all of the trucks, and there was a lot of truck movements, also not just for that company, but also for other companies, always linked to that warehouse. No one looked at the data, no one shared the data, so it was difficult to identify this at the beginning, but this, in the end, resulted in a multi-million loss program. So before I hand over to Gilad, just to give you the warning, right, so that it's not on you, I have to say, the problem is speed. The problem is cost and the ever-changing environment in which we are operating. We should never forget that everyone is looking for the weak link. Whilst we all understand what the weak links are, how good are we in convincing the business in order to build mechanisms and to implement these mechanisms to increase compliance and also to improve the process that we are hardening our supply chain. If we are not doing this, then we will continuously see this. But now I hand over to Gilad, who will take us through what is needed to address the risk.
Thank you, Eddie. This is great to be here again in front of this forum, new faces, but the topics in the last 20 years have not changed too much. I would like to add to the topic of the risk in the procurement initiatives of carriers. The supply chains and this industry is based on saving money today, especially due to the current financial situation. And we see more and more the concept of just-in-time, warehouse on wheels, and expanding the time of the loads on the road instead of occupying expensive shelf or warehouse space. And we need to influence, because organization needs to understand it is pay me now or pay me later. If they don't want to pay now for security improvements and mitigation measures, they will pay later in shrink and losses. And we need security professionals to be able to convince them and to show them the picture. There are lots of examples of how we can convince them. TAPA already used the RAND report of the factor of 5, that loss of an item in the supply chain equals actually 5 times the value of the product due to parallel market, missed opportunity, customer service handling, and so on and so forth. So even if we are thinking about insurance, we need to remember that loss of item in the supply chain, even if it will be paid through insurance, it will be paid once. The company will absorb 4 times. Okay? And we need to remember that in most cases, the CMR will yield very poor coverage of the value of the product. So we need to remember all those. So, what is needed in order to address the risk? So we need to remember that, like Andy said, there are infiltrations into the supply chain, subcontracting, even drivers that are being vetted sometimes will commit crime. And the reason is that the current measures of vetting are not suitable to the risk. They are not addressing the risk and the situation that we are facing. In addition to this, there are lots of lack of knowledge within the organization, but also law enforcement in many cases are not familiar with the complexity of supply chain. And when we need their support, it's sometimes limited in terms of resources, capabilities, technology, and so on. So we need to improve the vetting process. We need to ensure that within the organization, the vetting mechanism is efficient, and also to ensure that downstream we are not being exposed by the vulnerabilities of suppliers that we are using. This is an example from the report to the nation from 22 by ACFE, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. And it shows actually that many organizations are not conducting background checks, criminal records or previous employment checks, even interviews they are not doing. Only 57% of the companies are conducting those checks. And by the way, this is great improvement from years before. Before it was even worse. However, those checks are not yielding results. If you can see, only 12.5% of the total numbers are yielding the results of criminal record hits. Do we believe that this is the right number of red flags? I don't think so. And the reason is that in many cases, companies, even after being able to detect theft, are not filing complaints. Many companies are simply preferring to settle those cases without going to the police or without filing claims. And the reason is that sometimes it's too expensive because it takes time. Leadership needs to go to the police station. They need to file complaints. And in many cases, also, the police are not very eager to take those claims because they are not familiar with the topic. And in many cases, they are not willing to take a case that will result in non-conclusive or non-successful prosecution, which is bad for their statistics. Andy mentioned earlier about the shortage of drivers. If you look at this table, between 2016 and 2020, there was a huge reduction of drivers in the UK, roughly 50,000. At the same time, 50,000 drivers emerged in Romania. What happened? Did they find another way to make money? No, these are the same drivers. They are just registered in different companies that left the UK and were registered in Romania. And why is that so? Potentially, organized crime gangs purchased a lot of bankrupted companies with their drivers or registered those drivers there. Okay. And we talked about Romania. One of the phenomena that we identified in Romania was that people can change their name quite often, quite easily. So if there is a registration in companies about people that were caught, they can change their name, middle name, a letter in the name, and so on, and come back and re-enter the same company, the same organization, which they were rejected from earlier. So what is available? There are lots of measures that are available currently in the market. Many of them are not acceptable. Many of them are super expensive. Many of them considered to be intrusive. And we need to find what is the best combination of vetting mechanism in order to make sure that, like Andy said earlier, we will not invest to build a fortress and then open the main door and allow the people, the same people that we are trying to prevent from entering, we will bring them in. So, what are the options? We need to influence the legislation. Currently, obviously, we need to balance between the GDPR, the privacy, the right to be forgotten, the right to have a second chance, which are all very valid points, versus the right of an organization to protect their employees, their assets, their business, their operation. We need to improve incident reporting. Torsten mentioned earlier was begging to share incidents. I think this is critical, to create enough database that people can use and identify where are the hotspots, what are the trends, what are the new MOs, modus operandi, that we are facing, in order to be able to tackle them effectively. We need to engage law enforcement, to help them, to share with them, to teach them our operation, so they will be more effective. So we can help them to help us. We need them. And we need to improve the tamper evidence or the indicators, the red flags that we have in the supply chain. We are living with the TIR convention for many years, and while we know that there are many ways to manipulate it. So we need to find new mechanisms, new technologies, new solutions in order to deter, detect, and investigate those incidents. We should be using standards, and we should be using compliance. TAPA demonstrating lots of standards that can help us to combat those incidents and trends. And we need to ensure that we develop similar processes, similar practices within our organization in order to ensure that this is being implemented effectively, monitored and controlled, and this will yield the results that we are expecting. That's it for us at the moment. Any questions?
Gilad and Andreas, thank you both so much, gentlemen, for such an interesting presentations. We'll just have some time for some questions. But I'd just like to encourage everybody, we're so fortunate to have these security experts from Amazon here, so we'd love to have any questions from the floor, and indeed across the conference. Please do, when we have our question and answer sessions, feel free to ask questions. We've got 2 people with microphones, so if you just want to ask a question, pop your hand up, and we'll try and come to you. We have one already here. And also, I know that our speakers are around during the, again, not just these speakers, but other speakers also around during the next couple of days. So if we don't have time, you can get to have a chat with them outside of the conference. Please do stand up and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Fabio Barbosa from HP in Latin America, based in São Paulo, Brazil. So my question is about the privacy laws that impact the background checks. In my experience in my region, unfortunately, the privacy laws not allowed us to dig too much to identify the situation for the drivers and confirm what they are doing in the convictions. We cannot check that. Obviously, that we try. And then when we have incidents, the law enforcement say, why you not check? Because the privacy law not allowed us. What is here is a huge region with several countries. It's difficult also to get this information here for you guys.
Can you hear me? Thanks. First of all, we need to work very closely with legal, with privacy teams, with all the relevant entities, and to understand what we can do within the limitations. There are, as I mentioned earlier, there are various methodologies. Not everything is going to the history. Sometimes our risk assessment, like integrity validation. And there are various methodologies that are available in order to check the risk assessment of the person for now, not digging into the history. So these are the examples of things that we are able to do. You need to be able to scan the industry, what are the methodologies that are currently available, and use them within the limitations of the law.
But also to come back to this question, yes, it's a problem. It's timely, it costs time, it costs money. And how reliable is it? With migration also being an impact on the European market right now, like we all agree that you cannot pick up the phone to call someone in Aleppo to quickly ask about the criminal background of a potential Syrian employee. Same might be in the Ukraine, same might be in other countries that don't have this. Privacy laws, the further we go east, the more strict they become. That's also based on our history. Right? So with all of those systems which weren't democratic from the very beginning, where it was more about the control of an individual, people are more reluctant to share. So also looking into the direction of Poland, Czech Republic, as well as Slovakia, it's not as easy. But even if we look into the UK, right? In the UK, the average cost of criminal background check is around £60, roughly. It takes 3 weeks. So you're already allowing someone that you don't really know to work within your operations for 3 weeks, and let's agree, you don't need more time. It's just a question, right? To answer this, it's out there. Hence, our call also to find more innovative means to vet, which are agnostic of external influence, which help us to also go for bigger volumes. Now we can say a criminal background check is something looking in the past, an interview giving us a snapshot of now, but I doubt that we can conduct an interview every time in the same way. And we need to find a way that we can come up with an interview which is looking forward, assessing the likelihood of an individual to take certain actions in the same way, to come up with a potentially prescriptive outcome that still requires a human element to make the decision, right? So it's not that the AI or whatever tech out there should say no. Sorry?
Social networks.
Social network.
One element. It is one element, but it's...
Microphone next to you on your right, actually.
You grabbed mine. No, but I'm just saying, like, these are problems which are out there. We have them. They are all over the place. Thank you for the question.
For the answer. Now, when I mention a social network, in Latin America, you can cut drivers that we, some behaviors in the social network. We get the data and ask for the list of your social network during the filling the documentation, so you can check also. Recommendation.
It is one of the elements that we can use. That's why I said I didn't specify a single solution or single technology. As many data points that you will have within the privacy and legal restrictions, you will be able to make a better judgment because it's risk management. You manage the risk of a new person joining your network. And this is what we're trying to do.
Good. I think we had a question over here. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, it's working. Hi, I am Begoña Romero. I belong to the Association Professional of Criminologists in Madrid. And my question is, are the companies interested to invest in university research regarding the criminal behavior? Because at the end, it's really interesting, all the platform about this and all the data you share. But also I think so it's really important to understand better the motivation, not current motivation, also the future motivation between the physical security and and cyber security. Thank you.
So the short answer is yes. Let's speak after.
And we do have programs, right? So I just wanted to also mention this. We have interns that are working with us for a longer time. We have initiatives that we are working with universities. So it's out there. Happy if you want to link up so that we can follow up on this one. Because it's even going further, right? So for me, it's about how do we influence. We're going back to our theft triangle. Like how do we actually influence the theft triangle? What are the dimensions that we can influence by all of the mechanisms and processes that we are developing? For me, it's the best job that we can do if we have a better understanding that we are preventing loss before we have to investigate loss. Any loss investigation costs time, is not effective. We're actually running behind a lost item. And what are we celebrating? That we are recovering an item? Is this what we are celebrating? No, it's more, and I think everyone within the security industry, it's how can we help the business to protect their bottom line of the business. Let's think about this. The average profit margin in low-cost leadership environments is between 5 to 8%. If this is the profit margin and we're losing an item with a value of, what's, $5 or 500, let's make it interesting, 5,000. So in order to recover the bottom line impact of 5,000, we have to enable a top line of 100,000. How easy is that?
Especially now, when the growth is limited.
So we need to do this. We need to learn more. We need to be innovative, disruptive, and that's also what the expectation from us of forums like this is. Let's work together and be disruptive because we have a shared enemy. It's not us trying to protect us, because we could also say we could just try to run as fast or a little bit faster than the guy next to us or the company next to us. But then we are the next. Right? So let's work together as an industry to improve reporting, improve sharing of knowledge, and really work on new innovative solutions to really crack down on criminals.
I have a couple of questions myself, but I can't see if anyone else has put their hands up. But please, over here. Let me ask a question, then we'll come to you next. Andreas, can you tell us a bit more about the challenges that are limiting the effectiveness of the measures that you've already deployed?
One of the limits is cash and the utilization of cash. And then also a potential shift into a direction of cashless payments. Right? So on one end, I say like cash is the evil because cash is untraceable. It's so nice, it can disappear and you can cover up all of your debts. Like most of the companies don't have a debt. So from a due diligence, it's easy to cover this up because you're strong on cash assets. But now cash is a limitation. The buy-in from the business. The need to be quick and customer focused and at a cost-effective level. These are all problems that we have because whenever we come in, we are designing a mechanism that potentially slows down, that potentially costs money. And like the challenge that we have as security professionals is to win, to gain the trust of our business partners to really be seen as a value-adding function that's providing security as a service within a framework of risk acceptance. That's what we have to do. This is a challenge that I see, and also the fact that they're learning. Right, so even if we're putting something now, and what I shared on the slide might be outdated as I speak, and there's another thing, that's a challenge. And we are not cooperating enough. As said, like someone that's off-boarded today at Amazon on the platform might drive tomorrow for HP, Philips, Apple. And we are not sharing information good enough as an industry to ensure that we are helping each other.
Gilad, do you want to add to that at all? Because you touched a little bit on Andreas. I was going to ask, what are the trade-offs between operational needs and security considerations? And then I'll come up with that.
Like Andy said, cost and slowdown of operations are usually the main issues where the business is trying to improve productivity, and we are trying to find the best mechanism to allow maximum productivity while keeping good control of the processes and minimizing exploitable exposures. Now, as I said, sometimes it needs to be the discussion about pay me now, pay me later, because we need to be able to demonstrate to the business that allowing those vulnerabilities will be exploited. And it's better to be able to convince it before something bad is happening, and then we can say, we told you so. We prefer not to be in this situation. We need to be able to be strong enough and to convince ahead of time that these are the exposures that are realistic. Now, security as a general has the tendency to use the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, the business is not accepting it anymore. They want to see data. They want to see facts. And we need to be able to demonstrate the details and the data in a metrics-driven approach. Now, we developed in our organization a model of business and engagement, and it's based on three pillars: trust, confidence, and respect. The trust is on a personal level towards the security and loss prevention personnel. It's about their professionalism, transparency, collaborative approach. We are not the police officers of the company. We are business enablers. We are business partners. And we want to be called out very early in the process because they trust us. The second part is confidence. It's the organizational aspect, that they have confidence in our processes, that they are consistent, they are driven by methodologies and concept, and it's not just haphazard and random. And this will allow us, and it's also very responsible. So we're not playing the Rambos or this kind of thing, or Chuck Norris, like Torsten usually called me. And the last one is respect. Being a valuable partner, that you add value to the business, that they see that you can really provide value and make your partners, your stakeholders, successful, make their work easy and more efficient through security and loss prevention processes. So these are the engagement mechanisms in order to convince them to accept our ideas and requirements and to embed them in their processes.
Thank you, Gilad. Now, I think we had a question over here. Would you like to? Oh, yep, stand up, please. Thank you. And do introduce yourself. And ask.
Hello. My name is Liucija Panavičiūtė from Girteka. I'm the lead auditor in our logistics company in Lithuania. So coming back to the background checks, as always was mentioned, we have many laws against the privacy checking or legal documents requiring from the candidates. So TAPA has guidelines for logs, for root risk assessments. Is there a thought to maybe do some kind of guidance document for these methodologies? What to check while recruiting the person? What kind of methodologies to use when we cannot get like criminal records and we cannot ask for them?
I cannot speak on behalf of TAPA. I can just... Okay, so we will ensure that TAPA will help it. No, I think it's a good call out, and maybe TAPA should take it as a priority to help organizations to do those checks and to demonstrate what is available in the market, and maybe to bring here to the stage and to the exhibitions companies that are expert in this kind of vetting mechanism within the restrictions of law and privacy, and to see how we can help to tackle this, because it's a joint effort of all the people in this room.
Here's the voice behind the wall. I can answer that question. No, just kidding. Come on. Absolutely we can. That's exactly what we said in the first session. That's what we need, your feedback. And let's chat in the networking break on this one. I love it. Okay, thank you. So raise questions to Amazon. It's your chance. Where's my package from last week? No, just kidding.
That was my next question.
Did you pay for it?
And I know that
it's a bio-risk team, right?
Do I need?
The TAPA team is around in all the breaks as well. So, you know, you can speak to Torsten and all the rest of the team as well. Andreas, companies in our audience will be facing their own supply chain risks. What key areas do you think businesses should be focusing on?
First of all, understand that there is no first, middle, and last mile from a criminal perspective. Focus on your supply chain end to end. If you're doing this, you will be able to identify all of the seasonality within that life cycle of an organized crime organization infiltrating your network. So if you're doing this, you are staying away from potentially the trap of saying like, hey, everything runs well. I don't need to focus on the metrics for my first mile business, because that's a different stakeholder. When you're working with your team or when you're working with your companies, ensure that you develop a set of KPIs that help you to really monitor loss events end to end, and that help you to identify those areas within your supply chain where you need to deploy very targeted measures in order to drive this down. If you are coming in with a very one-size-fits-all approach, from an end-to-end approach, then it's too costly. It will suck up operational speed. And for most of our companies, it's about speed and cost at the same time, right? Looking at automotive, I know this is about speed and cost. So if you're doing this end-to-end, First thing, end-to-end, because there is no middle mile or OCG fan club. So they are targeting our supply chain, and they find out the weak spot. So be aware of all of the weak spots inside your supply chain. Apply a good risk management system.
I think we've got time for just maybe one or two more questions. I have one, but before I ask, does anybody else have one from the audience? No? Okay. Well, Gilad, just one final question. We just touched on it actually earlier, but Amazon is a very active member and supporter of Tapa Amir, and we've been hearing that Torsten is keen to hear what members would like more of from the association over its next phase of development. How does Amazon want to see Tapa Amir continuing to improve its value proposition for members?
I think that the main point that I would like to see is to have bidirectional interaction, meaning that when members are sharing incidents, they will have added value, meaning that the statistics in the TIS is not sufficient. There need to be some kind of connecting the dots, connecting or turning the information into intelligence and understanding, is it a trend? Is it new modus operandi? Is it something that we can start using in terms of planning our routes or avoiding hotspot? It needs to be more interactive, more structured, almost spoon-feeding the members, because this is where the information is consolidated. And this will, I'm sure, it will encourage more members of Tapa to contribute more incidents, because there will be an immediate value returned after submitting those incidents.
Well, on that note, we will leave it there, but please do join me in thanking both of our speakers, Gilad and Andreas. Thank you so much.